somebody once asked me, well, what will social media be like in the future? 10, 20 years from now. And my answer is, I don't know, right? 10 and 20 years is a long time, a long ways ahead, particularly if you consider how much things change in this information and digital age. But I think there are a number of things that, and also, it's very hard to predict the future, even the immediate future. If you will look at all of those movies about the future and how different the future turned out to be, we watch them now and they look so quaint because either they did not catch the new technologies that became dominant, or they focused some other things that the vision of the future is very different from how the future turned out to be. And yet I think we can still talk about the immediate future and the kinds of things that will happen based on the trends that we've seen so far, particularly in social media. I think one of the most interesting things that is happening right now is how quickly the digital divide is being bridged. For instance, a recent ITU report suggests that 2/3 of the world's population and more than 3/4 of the population in developing countries are not yet online. And those that are, many do not have the access to high-speed, high-quality internet services. That is true. So in a sense, the benefits of social media is not being enjoyed by a lot of people. It's still limited to mostly developed countries, and in developing countries, it's still limited to those in the urban areas. Although, of course, even in some far-flung areas, you still have internet access. The reality is internet is slow and not particularly reliable. Yet, I think also yet there's good news. There's hope. And this comes in the form of mobile phones. The projection is by the end of this year, global mobile phone penetration would have reached 96%, which means only a very small percent of the population, global population, will not have access to mobile phone. That's still a lot of people, but considering that mobile technologies just recently emerged, then reaching 96% by the end of this year is something that is really significant. And if you look at it, in the developed world, it has exceeded 100%. So it's 128%, which means there are people with 2 phones and not just one mobile phone. Even in developing countries, the figure is 89%, close to 90%, which is good. The future is not just mobile. The future is smartphones. Now, maybe smartphones is not a good name for it because you think telephone, but in fact, smartphones are computers. They are computers that can make calls. And that is significant because what we're saying essentially is that, so computing will be done everywhere, so as long as you have a smartphone. Now, feature phones are good. It allows us to make phone calls. It allows us to send SMS or text messages. But smartphone is even better. That allows us access to the internet. That allows us to have access on Facebook even we're on the beach while we are on the bus or the train. And soon even when you're on the plane. Already, the projection is that by 2016, 45% of the globe, or 45% of people in the world will have access to smartphones. In the Asia Pacific, the diffusion rate will move from 28.5% to about 38.6%. Now, obviously, it's not that precise, so it's, but the point is about a third of the population in the Asia Pacific are expected to have smartphones by 2016. So that is also another way of saying that 40% of the population by 2016 will have access to computing. And that is where the future of social media lies, which means more and more people suggest that the next billion people who will be online through mobile devices, such as smartphones or tablets, and of course your laptops and your notebooks. Because of this, it has been suggested that in the future, social media will be ubiquitous, monolithic, smarter, and invisible. Right? So let's take to ubiquitous and invisible, which is to say it's pretty much going to be like electricity. You plug into it when you need it. You know it's going to be there. You don't think much about it. In fact, the only time you think about electricity is when it is absent. You assume it's going to be there. So everybody will simply assume that social media is a part of their life. Not too long ago, it was very difficult to assume that when you travel, you'll have access to your mobile phones, right? Today, it's very... the reverse is now true. I'm surprised if I'm not able to use my mobile phone when I travel to another country. Before, having access to Wi-Fi was something which was few and far between. In fact, there's still countries where you can't have access to Wi-Fi, but that's not for technical reasons, but for political reasons. But the point is, when you go to developed countries, and increasingly in developing countries, Wi-Fi is plentiful. It's everywhere. Very few coffee shops nowadays do not offer Wi-Fi service. In fact, some of my friends will not go to a coffee shop without a free Wi-Fi. They've come to think of it as part of the service. It's no longer an extra. It is now expected to be part of it. The monolithic part of it is, for me, the one that's a bit worrisome, because some of the projections say that we will only be using 3 platforms in the future. Most of the things that we will do only in 3 platforms. I am not excited about that, if in fact that is what's going to come and what's going to happen. I think innovation thrives under conditions of competition and not of monopoly or oligopoly. So that is about, for me, the dark cloud in terms of the projections for the future. But smartphones and devices will be even smarter. That's good news. That means, and right now we talk about big data and analytics, which only means that sellers will be able to tailor services to our specific needs and requirements. They'll be able to offer better services, better products, products that we want, products that we need, simply because of the smarter technologies that's going to come down the pike. So, in fact, one of the most optimistic view about social media in the future is that social media will be like air. We need it to thrive, and without it, we will not prosper. We will not even live. That's how important some people believe social media will become. But among the most interesting projections, one of the more interesting forecasts about social media in the future is one that is given by Professor Uricchio. And according to him, The future of social media is rooted in the past. He says, we've always been social. And after a century of turning our eyes to the heavy industry of media, we are learning again how to turn to one another. Now, I think this is a very powerful claim that, in fact, all these new developments will only, in a sense, restore our true being, right? The fact that we are social. Unfortunately, for 1 century, it was media, the heavy industry, traditional media, that has dominated. And so now we are going back to the past. He says, conditions have changed, of course. Social media offers us malleable identities, global reach, instantaneous impact. We are beginning to see new forms of aggregate behavior. Understanding comes next, and with it, an appreciation that this newly enabled collectivity has implication and edge. The future of social media is, in a profound way, civic.